So I had this realization earlier that may help some of you if you also fall into frustration or impatience with the process, a manifestation or reality shifting or ascension. And actually, it works for any process that you might be going through. And I had this realization when I was putting my little one to bed. And I live in the northern hemisphere where February, this is recorded in February 2024, February is the shoulder month between winter and spring. The winters here are very, very mild, but they're noticeable, especially at night, because I live in the high desert, so the nights can get pretty brisk. But what's fascinating is that I almost gave away her warm pajamas because I receive so much from the universe that I like to pass it on. And instead of trying to resell or hold on to things, I just want to pass it on to somebody else who might need it. And I had planned to pass along her warm sleep pajamas to this particular person who has a niece and could benefit from the clothes. And in my head, I almost gave it to this person yesterday because we have had so many warm nights. And I thought to myself, no, I should be careful because I have a tendency to give too much too soon. And this is one of my personal lessons that I'm working on, which is making sure that I have enough for myself and making sure that I'm taken care of, and then taking care of others and passing along abundance. If you're like me, you love when other people are abundant and happy and carefree, and it's a gift to be able to give. But if we're not careful, then overgiving can put us in precarious situations. And I've been there more times than I can count. And this is part of my own shadow work journey, self-love journey, and doing things differently. So tonight, when I realized it was going to be another night that was a little chilly, I pulled out my little one's furry fleece animal pajamas, and I felt this sense of gratitude for myself and that I didn't give it away because she needs it. And in fact, she's sleeping peacefully with it now. And I was struck with this realization. The mundane is such a wonderful teacher if we have the time and the energy for which to learn from these everyday moments. Winter doesn't just end overnight. I know it's so obvious, right? It's super obvious. You might even be like smirking because it's that obvious. Spring inches forward. Snow begins to melt depending on where you're at. The ground begins to thaw. But you might have a couple of cold nights here and there during that process. The ocean, when it changes tides, doesn't do so in a blink of an eye and a snap of a finger. It does so with this hand of currents that reaches and drags and then reaches a little bit more and drags a little bit less, reaches a little bit more and drags a little bit less. And over a process of time, in the space-time capsule, that is, what we observe is a slow and steady change marked by predictable, relatively, if you zoom out enough, predictable cycles, punctuated with unpredictable, zooming in now, unpredictable steps forward, steps back, depending on your perspective. So when you're headed in a certain direction, there's almost this lag, this pullback that's brief. It should be brief if you continue moving in that new direction or that shift direction. And this is something that I have observed on the journey in a variety of different ways. For example, in my reality shifting experience, what I have personally seen is that there is a vacillation effect, is what I call it. I also see this on the personal transformation journey. When people are making really big changes to their identity or lifestyle changes, what happens is that you don't just wake up as a new person. You slowly shift into it, but there are certain moments that you shift back, particularly if you are challenged or when the past comes back, or if you're closing out a lesson, or you go to visit family. These are all anchor points. And so what happens when you are faced with an anchor point is that you can, for a moment, get pulled back into an old bubble. You get pulled back into an old way of being, and you even reload your thought patterns and your internal software, so to speak. You boot up old programs and you start to behave in predictable ways. And if you are cognizant of this, if you are conscious and observing yourself, then you can catch yourself. But if you're not, then you'll just go with the old programs until something shakes you out of it. And this is why divorce, those of you who have seen it or experienced it up close and personal, will know that it's a really long process of letting go that often happens years before people file the papers. And then there's its own sort of set of closures. And each individual will have a different way of dealing with that grief and dealing with that closure. Some do it up front. Some grieve before the papers are signed. Some grieve after. It's rumored that men actually, heterosexual men, and again, it's a rumor, I have no idea if it's true or not, will tend to grieve after. And so they hold everything together up until the signing, and then they fall apart. Whereas their heterosexual women partners tend to fall apart, apparently, before the papers. And again, I don't think we can create these generalizations. And it's not like the grieving process ends when the papers are signed, but it's a multi-year stage process that you go through different stages of acceptance and letting go. And some people never actually accept or let go, and that causes problems. But the point is that everything in our lives follows a rhythm like the ocean, a rhythm of creeping forward and stepping back a moment, creeping a little bit further and stepping back. I shouldn't say everything. We can always think of transition times where this is not the case. But when it comes to personal transformation, reality shifting, and manifestation, what I have observed is that more often than not, this vacillation effect is the norm, where you start to let go of your spouse, and then holidays come, and you're triggered, and you backtrack a little bit. I know people that continue to actually engage intimately in secret, even though both parties have moved on with other people, but they continue to have liaisons and do so for years. And this is part of that vacillation effect, where there is a letting go and then a reuniting, a letting go and a reuniting. Not everybody follows this formula, but they do so in their own way. Not everybody sleeps with their spouse after their divorce, but they might carry on hope or something as part of the grieving process as they slowly unfurl that attachment. And the more they let go, the more this process takes hold, the less they slip back in their minds, and the more available they become for dating again. This is why now, personally, having been through divorce, I didn't know I was going to talk so much about divorce. Somebody, I think, needs this. This is why I will not consider dating anybody in separation and who has not been at least 5 years past divorce. It's a threshold. And that's final. Like, the divorce is final, not like, oh, we're living apart and no. So the idea is that emotional availability is not something that just comes online immediately. Similarly, when you're manifesting a new life for yourself, you are going to shift into that new life and then have these moments where you shift back. And that doesn't mean anything is broken. And for me, I tend to go through different levels of sentience in my everyday existence. And sometimes when I slip into lower levels of sentience, it is almost as though I have a child inside of me that doesn't understand the bigger picture, that doesn't understand the fuller picture of divine timing and what it takes. It's like I have a part of my sentience that's like the kid in the back seat of the car. Are we there yet? Are we there? Are you sure? Are we there yet? Are we? No, are we there yet? And even though I am quite mature, psychologically, emotionally, and I'm spend a lot of time in a mature state, I still have moments where I'm like that kid in the back. And that's part of my relationship with the universe and working on my spiritual maturity, which I take very, very seriously and do so on a dedicated daily basis. Because I love the process, I love the journey. And what I observe is that when I start to shift and I start to manifest things, and when I start to see people populate in my life that don't meet what I believe are the criteria for the new manifestation, I'm just going to be honest about it. Sometimes I see the people that are attracted to me personally, and I'm like, I'm not going there again. I'm not doing it. Don't come at me. It's just, let's stop while we're ahead. And it's great that I can see this now. It's great that I can see the lessons that are coming with the people. But sometimes I feel like, why? And then I look at the proportion and I start to realize that everything is shifting and changing. The proportion of people that are meeting a threshold of mutual interest in my manifestation packages is slowly shifting in the rightward direction. But sometimes I'll have people come out of left field that are invitations to go back. No, I think I'm good. And so instead of seeing this as there's something wrong, like the kid in the back seat, are we there yet? I am now starting to see it as, this is a time for me to practice my reality selection method. This is a time for me to practice reality sorting and discernment. And similarly, when we walk out of karmic lessons, what I have also observed is that we do so not in one fell swoop, but we do so in this progressive manner where the people that we choose may represent lessons from our past, but the way those lessons manifest and materialize are much, much lighter and allow us to exercise our new found gifts and abilities, such as power and boundaries, self-respect and self-love. Those are the 4 that I have been working on for a couple of years now. And so the universe will bring you people for which to do those things and for which to prove to yourself that you have mastered those lessons and you do have what it takes. But it's never as bad as that time when you got that lesson, like when you finally clicked for you and you could finally see it for what it was. And you never go back there because you've learned how to head it off at the pass. And it's almost this, you slowly back away. And the people that represent that, whatever it was for you, right? People are portals. They exit. And they do so in a process that is like a tide going out. It's a beautiful dance, actually. And so from the position of impatience and not understanding the bigger symphony, we can make these judgments and have negative emotions that really are illusions. That is the point, because we don't stand on the beach and yell at the ocean for not shifting tides at the snap of our finger. That would be ludicrous, right? We don't stand outside at night in February looking up at the moon, demanding spring to happen. It wouldn't even be funny. It would just be weird, right? So why would we expect that our manifestations or the ascension process to happen at a snap of our fingers. Instead, we can see the beauty of the tides and we can shift and change with the wind. So listen, I am a reality shifting coach. If you feel called to work with me, you'll know. sacredjourneyproductions@gmail.com.